Back at it, guys. Just lost a bit of an annoying one up here. Was it 9s? Against Queen 8 suited, jammed UTG, called River Queen. So I took a bit of a dint there. Bit of a hit, I should say, but yeah, I mean, we've still got M9-ish, it looks like, so. If you're just tuning in, guys, we do have the PokerStars bug running. Bug out. We have the bug. It's kind of, you can see the circles actually stay sort of, the players are involved in the hand, but their avatars are faded, and the action, it still says raise and call. It doesn't change. I guess we're going to fold that, eh? It's kind of annoying. This is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 14. I would have just called a jam for sure, but I think once the other guy overcalls, the options are to I mean, we can call and try and see what happens post, I guess, still with the King 10, but and top left I just shove turn. I mean, I don't think there's too much point to betting, just betting. I mean, if he's got a pair, he's probably going to call. If he's got a flush draw, he's probably going to call. He's probably got a pretty inelastic range where he's just going to call any bet size. If he has a hand that's, he thinks has got a chance to win, given the SPR was so low. Probably going to be a raise fold top right, M9 UTG. I think that most players won't attack a M9 UTG raise with a jam with much worse than what we have. And thankfully it does get around, so that's just an easy way, a little bit better. Just to win the blinds and antes there is fine. Can we fold? 5, he's only M5. I think we can fold though. It's only M5, but I think we can fold. 6 of 54. Wow. Top right, do 7. Probably the only hand I'll fold there. Better just to jam on these guys, right? Well, it's kind of close, but yeah, I'll just jam it. If we raise and they jam on us, I mean, we put ourselves in a pretty tough spot. Jack 9 suited has a really high PN, 39. I mean, we can raise fold or we can just jam and do it that way. It's pretty close, I think. Well, I don't even know if we can raise fold actually against these guys. So, I mean, if that's the case, jamming is definitely better. Because the last thing we want is like them jamming like Queen 10 on us when, you know, or like King 9 when they would have folded if we had just jammed. We do narrow their range, obviously, but I think that's fine just because they're folding so often. Whereas we don't really want to keep their range wide because their wide range is going to be really bad for our Jack 9 hand if they're going to have, you know, King 9, 10 Jack, Jack Queen, stuff like that. They're not going to have any hands that we dominate. Unless they jam, I guess, well, virtually none. But maybe if they jam like 8, 9 suited, I guess it's possible. So that instance where your hand can easily, or your opponents can, when you just raise, you know, they can make a good decision by 3-betting you with a hand that has the right equity to do so, or by just folding. A lot of the time it's better just to jam yourself. And the other hands that fall into that category, of course, are going to be hands like Ace 4 and pocket, you know, 3s, hands like that. You know, if you raise Ace 4 on the button and a guy with like M5 or 6 jams, you know, 10 Jack suited, or let's say something like that, you know, King 8 suited in the let's just say in the small blind, you're actually allowing him to actually, you know, play correctly. Because that's a hand that probably had the right equity. Given the dead money that's already out there, and the fact that it's almost a flip, you know, against an Ace X. And so, pretty messy bottom right, but I will jam now. We've got the double belly, and we're just against big blind, so you can have a lot of hands. We could even have the best hand. Some of the time you might have 6, 8, 8, 9 or something like that. If he has got like a 5, you know, King 5 or something, it's pretty hard for him to call. If he's got a set though, it's not going to be that hard. So yeah, and I think top left, I think I'm just going to get in now. He can have a King Queen or something like that, I guess, some of the time, but or aces, but I just think that the pot had become so big compared to his stack size. On a board where, you know, I wasn't really convinced we were necessarily beat. I think he could have had some spades or a 10 or maybe Jack Queen, even though we did have Jack blockers. But he could have had something like that. I've just been fishing around. I did bet pretty small on the flop with the intention of trying to get players perhaps to, you know, to solicit some action with weaker hands. But obviously he had aces, and I don't even know how that happened. I mean, just funky. I guess he just got funky on us with the pre-flop flat and then min raise on the flop. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, we would have got it all in pre anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much to us, but just interesting that he did flat it there. Probably going to fold that one. This first time this guy's opened, I think. Oh, just stretching, sorry guys. I think it's the first time he's opened, is it? Yep, raise first in, 0. Left 12. Kind of, we're going to call bottom left. It's kind of, I'm really in between here, between, you know, what to do. I will gamble top right and just flat that one. Yeah, I'm kind of in between. So 137, 35. Yeah, I mean, I was in between just getting it in or four betting, folding. I was sort of, I didn't really know what to do. I mean, his raise looked like a light three bet to me. Um, and he's in the position to re-steal, so all signs sort of pointed towards he could be light, but at the same time, we just know nothing about this guy, so I sort of went with a careful option. Top right was close. We probably could have checked back flop, but I just decided to bet small. That player might have been onto us and said, hey, this guy's trapping me here. He's not calling a short stack UTG open without the nuts. He might have been thinking that if he's a decent player. The Queen King was pretty close. I could have 3-bet that pre. The initial opener was an early position, but kind of on the loose side. I did decide just to flat because I don't mind keeping in some hands I dominate. But obviously we didn't get the good flop. But you know, we did have backdoor straight and flush, so I think I'm just going to flat the ace king here and hope to get action behind. Someone might squeeze or yeah. And Killstrom, I don't mind living in some hands I think that we dominate. He can barrel post flop with a reasonable frequency if we get a nice ace or king high board. Or we might just get the queen 10-7. But you know, gut shot, backdoor flush. And he's checked, so I think I'm actually just going to check back here. It's kind of close, I think, but the problem now is if he fires like this, you know, it puts us in a little bit of a tough spot. But I think I will call now. Just based on the pot odds and the fact that he checked flop. And if he bets again, I think we're going to have to fold. In his mind, we probably look like we have, I think, like ace 10, 10 jack suited. Well, I guess we could have had nines, which obviously gets there. I wonder if he bets nines. Problem is now he can have like the same hand or ace jack a lot, but you know we don't beat much. So if he's got that hand, it's just bad luck. And as it was ace nine. So I think that the turn call was okay, and I don't think he's going to bet river if he doesn't hit. So I think we would have won the pot, and we did get to keep in a hand that we were dominating. So all in all, I think the hand was played okay, but 3-betting pre is probably what I would normally do. I just kind of decided to get a little bit sort of trappy, a bit tricky with that one. I was hoping someone might come in behind and pop it up because they know Killstrom is a pretty wide opener and we can call a little bit loose, so I think it's a pretty good spot for a squeeze. I was hoping to induce it. And I don't think we can quite fold this hand. Yeah, I mean, just a little bit too strong against M3 button jam, King 7, and unfortunately we don't hit the up and down or hold up there, so. Um, yeah, it was kind of annoying, that one, because we're getting close to the money and now we're short, so it's pretty annoying, but what you gonna do when they come for you? Queen 10, come on, Queen 10. Nope. Just need to go on a heater. Need to go on a rush. right now. I might just close the window actually. It's getting cold. I thought this sound and animation bug would have been corrected itself by now on PokerStars. Usually does, but it hasn't. Probably going to get 3-bet a lot there. I think I'm going to take this one. The guys behind are not the small blind, but the big blind's quite tight. And now I wish we had enough. I think that from a PN point of view, it's not quite there, but I just think that these guys are probably not quite calling enough. Very close there. I think 4-bet jamming is fine. And I would have done it with, I think if we had ace-5 or if we were suited. Ace-6 is kind of the worst ace to have. Obviously because if he has a sort of hand he's representing and calls, ace-6 is going to have less equity than a hand like ace-5 or ace-4 or ace-3 or ace-2, because those hands can make straights a little bit easier than ace-6, and that's the sort of extra equity that you want when you're up against a top range like ace-king or queens or something like that, which is what, if he snap calls, he can have. I mean, versus a button steal, he doesn't have to have obviously those hands that strong. He can have ace-10 and pocket 7s and stuff, but yeah, just generally speaking, he's going to have a good hand, and we'd rather have a small ace or something suited just to give us a little bit more equity for the times that we're wrong with our 4-bet jam, and he does actually have a strong hand. But I do think, he's 3-betting 18% against button steals, and I think that that's very, very high, and he does know that we like to steal. So I think that there's definitely an opportunity there to 4-bet. And we do have an ace blocker. So it was right on for me. But at the same time, we do have M24, and I didn't just want to suddenly sort of, spew off M11 or 12 or whatever it was, especially against that guy who's sort of a pretty bad player. So I think we can find better spots. And I will actually, 16-24, but I will actually raise Killstrom here, because he's a pretty loose opener. And I don't really want to flat here and get squeezed behind, or yeah, I just think it's a little bit better to, I think the immediate fold equity have is pretty good. He's raising about 22-ish% of hands from there, I would say. So we're going to get a lot of immediate folds, and of course he does c-bet with a pretty decent frequency, so this just prevents that from happening. We can now take the initiative. I'm just going to bet definitely smallish here. There's definitely no need to bet too big, because we're representing a pretty polarized range here where we have big pairs or a 10 and 3-bet light. So we're not going to have too many 10s, obviously. Maybe ace-10, 10-jack suited, king-10 suited once in a while. He does actually go for it, which is actually very Killstrom-ish, to actually check raise on a board like this. I think because he plays a lot of hands like it's kind of live, like a live tournament. He might have some hands he wants to protect here, like 8s and that, so I think I'm just going to fold, but it's pretty close because he's obviously representing a pretty polarized range. That is a sort of thing that's very typical, I think, of his style, was to check raise boards like that. A lot of players will go sort of into control mode, or if they don't have a hand, they just fold. Because, can we shove there? Yeah. Actually, it's probably a little bit deep. I didn't realize we were quite that deep. But I just glanced and saw this guy's opening just tons. So it's probably completely fine, but... And I will just jam here now with Queen 10. Yeah, what a lot of live players do is they rep the nothing. You've probably seen that before, where they rep the nothing. They check raise on a 3-8-8 board with King 7. and just pretend to have an 8. That's the sort of thing I think Killstrom does. That's more of a live player mentality, where a good player knows, a multi-level thinking player will anticipate and say, well, yeah, I have King 7. I'm going to represent an 8 because it's 883. But my opponent, well, he's not really going to think I have an 8, is he? So that's probably a pretty silly idea. So I'm just going to fold. I think Killstrom either doesn't think that deep and is a bit of a shallow thinker, or he thinks that but just doesn't care anyway and just goes for it and just decides, hey, I'm not repping much, but I don't think he has much, and I'm just going to go for it, and I think he's going to fold some of the time. I'm not sure. It could be the latter because he does get good results and he's a decent player, so maybe it's the latter. But I have seen him do some pretty fishy things. This is really close down here. I think we can actually bet here. And as for the 6s, I mean, that's a pretty gross spot, but I think folding is okay. Yeah, so we can get rid of this table now right up here. So we get rid of that, and we can bring in this sucker. Wow. I guess we're going to have to check there. I thought he might have a hand like that, but I don't know if he's folding. I'm not sure he's in the mood for folding on the repeat ace. Maybe if we bomb it. So the up and down top left obviously worked out when the king turned there. Yeah, it's an interesting sort of thing about Killstrom, isn't it? What I was just saying about his style. He does a lot of really dumb stuff where you're just like, huh? What did you just do, But he gets results, so it's like a Phil Hellmuth, it's kind of hard to argue. I'm sure he does some things which are fantastic, and he does some things which are, mega donkish. You can see he did actually 3-bet light there with the ace-3, 2.5x, and did manage to back into the straight, but is out. He seems to do well in big deep stack tournaments, big buy-ins and stuff. So I think he plays okay with a deep stack. He's one of his strengths is he's very good at putting people under pressure. I think that's one thing he does do very well, and we saw that when he just check raised our flop bet. Obviously, he's repping a very thin range because the 10-10 X board. He shouldn't really have that many 10s, but he might also just decide, he could have trapped a small percentage of the time, but he might almost just decide some of the time that he's just going to take 9s or, play 9s aggressively from that point. Likely the best hand, and maybe we'll spaz out, which, I almost did. I almost did go ahead and attack his check raise because, like I said, he's repping such a thin range, and I don't know. I mean, we can float it. We can do a few different things. We can float, raise turn. We can raise flop. Yeah. I mean, if I had aces, I would probably just think call on the flop, and kings as well, I guess. Actually, no. You know what? I would probably just raise straight away. I probably would. So I guess I could do that with some other hands, like the one we had. The reason why I would just do it straight away is because I think if he's got a hand that he thinks is likely good, he's not going to fold it because he's that type of player, and he might think that we don't believe he has a 10 and just play back aggressively with a less than premium hand, and he might get in a less than premium hand himself. Whereas if he just call and the turn's a queen and he does have a hand like 7s or something, he might now decide to bet small, fold or raise, or just bet small, give up river, or just check and give up, or we might lose value that way. And, I think I will raise this guy because he is a bit of an animal, this guy. Bit of an animal. Raising first in 35%, 29 from early, 30 from mid, 60 from the button. This is quite active opening stats for a guy we have 1k hands on, which may make him a bit of a reg. Hard to say, but that's a few hands to have on a player if they don't. I mean, it would be a bit of a coincidence to have 1,000 hands on a player if he's not. If he's only a part-timer, it just means we've been sat at the same table a whole lot, so. Pretty easy get in down there, wasn't it? On the bottom middle. Haven't been doing very well in these. Well, actually, maybe not so much this one. What I was going to say is the small turbos. We haven't had any good scores in small turbos. I don't have any going at the moment, which is, I mean, good. I mean, we don't want to be playing. We're building a bankroll. We don't want to be playing too many small turbos. Well, any turbos. I did play a couple, but yeah, I'm just thinking. Usually, I get a few injectors, so to speak, to the bankroll from a couple of turbo scores, but been running really bad in turbos. 16 of 39. Just hovering there. I guess we're going to fold there. A little bit. It was a little bit suspicious, the flat, but you could still flat with a semi-wide range. Lucky we didn't get crazy there and do anything wild. Like if we had deuces or something, I probably would have just shoved. 9, 10, 11, Lender. About 20% from there, probably opening. Am I gonna raise here? Yeah, I think I'm just gonna min here. I think this guy just folding off enough, but he's gonna jam obviously a lot. But I think he's, well, I mean, he hasn't defended yet a big blind, so 0 of 6. So just kind of hoping, he's just gonna fold, but risking. Well, yeah, actually, I would have jammed that actually. Between this PokerStars bug and the time bank, it's really tilting. Yeah, I would have jammed that against Centipede. I think he has a bit of a range there on that small 3-bet in position against some unknown guy. We had a pretty good stack size, just close to the second pivot to jam there, get some fold equity, and we could have the best hand. You could have ace jack sort of stuff, ace tens, ace king and call, and win a big pot, which we kind of need because we are getting a bit low, and it does look like he has a hand like that. So that's kind of annoying. It looks like he's going to fold now on the river, but and he does. So I guess we would have had the best hand. Yeah, I'm waiting for this PokerStars to go beep, 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 beep. That's what it does when this bug fixes itself. It goes beep, 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 and all the sounds from that you've missed for the last 2 hours all of a sudden come flying out at you, and it just beeps literally for the next 5 or 10 minutes with, all the times it was, your time to act, or, your time bank was going down, and etc. It's going to be deafening when it happens. It's going to happen in a moment, I hope. Get rid of this bug. Somehow the fours managed to hold on there. It's always good. I think top right, we just have to go with this one now. This guy's kind of tight, but he's only M 1.75-ish. And I would like to think even a tight player at that stack size is going to jam a hand like 5-6 suited. And we need chips. Because we are now going to be, it's at 90k. So we're going to be around 39 of 88. It hasn't caught up yet. But we will pop up to, here we are, popped up now, 39 of 86. It's pretty close one, the pocket fives. We can commit to the big blind and probably fault everyone else, so it's pretty much just a naked steal. Yeah, pretty close. Just going to probably check now. I mean, it's just 4-way. Yeah, just check and hope to hit the miracle 5 on the turn. Just too many players to super into. Pretty good spot now. We got Brian 3-betting, and he can induce there with that sizing with some hands we beat, like Ace 10 and Ace 9 and stuff. I think he might do that. And so just going to shove it in. And he does have kings, so we don't. 10 ball. Where is the 10 ball? So yeah, I mean, obviously he had a huge hand, but he's fairly aggressive. Well, we're gonna raise actually. Maybe we can. And we are not winning all ins here at the moment. It's a bit devastating. Chips are not flying in our direction. They're flying everywhere but. Yeah, that would have been a good one to spike, because it's getting kind of deepish now, 30, 35 of 15, top 15 get paid, so, and it's a decent tournament. 4, 8, 9, 10. Yeah. This is kind of what I was hoping would happen bottom right, is that we'd run into aces. Well, not so much the aces part, but I was hoping it would get around to the big blind, and he was so short, he was committed with any two. Which, is pretty profitable for us. But it's pretty borderline. 10 jack at a deeper stack is definitely an easy open, but at this stack depth, there's a lot of players that are going to just jam or fold, and we're not even that deep ourselves, so it's very questionable. And yeah, and it was pretty borderline. 10, 5, 8. It's just not going our way at the moment, is it? Bottom left, I think this guy's just tight enough, and he's 3-bet a pretty early sort of opener that we can fold. Yeah. 6.5. We could probably just open here and fold to a jam, I guess. It's getting very close to being bad, but our hand is kind of pretty. This guy's been limping a bit, so I mean 26% VPIP, but pre-flop raise only 8, so he does have a fairly big gap between the limping and the raising, and so that has prompted me to just jam. But I mean, we do have sixes, so. But what I mean is he can sometimes limp there with a big hand. He's in early position, but if it was a tight player, he could have limped with something decent. But this particular player looks like he has a decent limping range, so I think he's limp folding enough that the jam there is okay. And I mean, sometimes he might even call with a hand that we're beating. We can't get there. It's not happening. Where is the run good? And we are down to 6 tournaments today, and not having much joy. No heaters, other than the ones in the room here, because it is literally freezing outside. It's almost 7 AM here, and probably minus 1 outside or something right now, I guess. And I've got to say, this PokerStars bug is really annoying me now. Try shutting a few things down, see if it makes any difference. Didn't play any full tilt today. Pocket threes, I think I'm going to fold that one. That's something I was trying to get at before, actually. 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. Wow, that's pretty close. But I think M3 just over. We can't fold bottom middle. That's something I was trying to get at before when I was talking about opening in marginal spots in the lower stakes games, like with the 10 jack suited bottom right before. The thing about opening with those hands is that a lot of players don't really respect raises, and they're just going to call with wide ranges, and that's exactly what you don't want. I mean, part of the reason why you're opening from UTG is because it looks strong. You want to get a bit of extra fold equity. You've got 10 jack, which is a marginal hand. It does have some good implied odds in terms of its rather than its raw equity, its post flop playability. It has good smooth equity distribution, so it's going to like a decent amount of flops and give you some good betting boards and barreling turn cards and so forth. But all in all, 4, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with that one. It's kind of close. Players are just going to call still, with like King 10 and, silly stuff, which is exactly what you don't want. So, it's just... It's just something to be aware of when you're trying to steal in a buy-in that's lower, like a big 11. That players, you raise early, thinking everyone will fold, with your ace 4 suited because you've got the ace blocker and you're in early, so they're going to give you credit. But they still call with like ace 9, so... just generally speaking, I mean, obviously there's still going to be some good players in there, but... jam or raise, jam or raise, jam or raise. I think just jam. Definitely could have just clicked the min button, and these guys just, when you do that, just auto jam a lot with anything. So it might have been better with ace jack suited, a hand that strong, to just min and give him the option to shove on us. Yeah, it might have been a little bit better actually in hindsight, but either or. It really depends on the player. I mean, a lot of players might perceive a raise there to be actually stronger than a jam because it looks like you're trying to solicit action, which we would have been. But that's more of a sort of pro level thinking. I don't anticipate these guys thinking like that. They're just going to think, hey, you're stealing. I'm jamming with King Deuce, and that sort of thing. Bottom left is going to be a close one because it's an M8.5 that we have. And so I am just going to jam. This guy has a reasonable opening frequency from there. I would say in the vicinity of sort of 30-ish percent, 30% plus. He's also in a position where he's got a big stack, so he's probably raising a bit more. He gets good leverage against these guys. He's probably raising 35%-ish from there. And I would think sevens would be at M8.5. It's a pretty nice... Yeah, I mean, it's just a nice spot to be in, really. He does call with ace 10, so, you know, a little bit, I wouldn't say it's overly loose, but it's a little bit on the loosish side. I probably would have folded it, but he might be adjusting to, you know, the fact that we're probably adjusting to him, and he might be readjusting to that, you know. He might be multi-level thinking about that, as he should be if he's a good player. Not sure he is, but you know, he should be thinking, okay, ace is up, knows I'm opening loose. I can respond by calling a little bit looser because he's going to be jamming me a little bit wider. And so the ace 10 is pretty close. I imagine it's, yeah, he doesn't call much looser than that. I don't think we can fold against this guy because he's just very loose. And, I mean, King Jack suited, it's at this stack size M7. I mean, in a short-handed game, it's pretty decent. Unfortunately, he had King Queen. That's going to happen some of the time, but I think he could have rolled, you know, like twos and stuff. Maybe some suited aces and maybe even the odd Jack Queen. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's one of those hands where, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to be, I mean, we're pretty much behind. But given the fact that there's a lot of dead money out there, and the reason why I say a lot of dead money is because we only have M7, you know, and so at M7, you know, when there's a raise and then a jam and all the blinds and antes, I mean, the money out there, the dead money becomes significant. Obviously, if you're M50, then it's not significant because it's such a small, you know, obviously I'm talking about it being a significant, you know, significant proportional to your stack size. And we were, you know, just a little bit too short. You know, if we fold there, we're down to M7, couple of hands, we've got the blinds, levels go up soon. All of a sudden, we're M4, M5. We're just in tiny stack shove mode. I prefer just to take the King Jack there. It is a gamble, like I said. I don't think we have the best hand very often at all. Our equity-wise, I'd imagine we've probably got like 48, 47, 46% equity. But when you factor in the dead money that's out there, that's definitely a plus EV. A plus EV call, even with, you know, obviously less than 50% equity because of all the dead money. And I think that's one time in MTT where you've just got to sort of just take the best of a bad situation and just go for it. If you intend to try to rebuild your stack and get into a position where you can win. King Jack off, I would have folded. King Queen, I would have called off, and most pairs probably fives up, and ace 10 up, around that sort of range I would call with. So King Jack suited, I mean, it is the exact, King 10 suited I would have folded. So it is the exact like cutoff for what I would call with, as you would expect, since it's sort of getting to that point where it's not going to have the, it's not a favorite and it is going to be behind his range. But yeah, I think you know, obviously when we see King Queen, it's unfortunate, but I just think that based on that player's stats, it's going to be pretty close to a flip. And with all the dead money out there and the urgency that we have with a small stack, it's just time to go for it. and that's just part of the way I play. We could have folded and tried to pedal the mini stack, but yeah, I think that was a fairly good opportunity to try and build up to an M15 stack and get back in it. Of course, I say M15 if you're wondering, because we're M7 and then we double up and we get blinds and antes as well, and go to M15. And M15 is a pretty healthy stack to have, and it gives you a lot of maneuverability in terms of, you can call pre-flop, you can speculate, or you could just call pre-flop against some players in position. You can 3-bet to fold. You can open a whole bunch, and if you get 3-bet, you just be folding, and it's no big deal. You have the option to 4-bet, a jam if someone 3-bets you and you think they're light. So you've got all these sorts of moves up your sleeve. You can defend your blinds a little bit wider. All this sort of stuff that you can do. Whereas, if we just fold there, the blinds pass, we're M6, we don't have any moves. I mean, we're just going to be pretty much just shoving first in. And so that's when you're talking about stack preservation, that's one time when I'd actually opt, not to preserve. I'd actually go the other way and opt to attack. Whereas if we had sort of an M15 and an M8 jams on us, or M9, that's a time when I might be more inclined to think about stack preservation. Because if we have M15, we have a bigger skill edge and we have more moves up our sleeve. And if we lose M9, we only go down to M6. Next thing you know, we're a tiny stack and desperately jamming, trying to get double ups and get ourselves back into it. And there's very little skill edge with that sort of stack size. When we're short stacked, we're making very good decisions. We're using power numbers. We can make always, plus EV decisions, and not necessarily go too close to break even. We're making, decisions that are profitable, which is great. But the reality is that as powerful as the power numbers are, the full power numbers, even people that don't really have a jam chart, whether it be Jennifer, which uses exact hands from all BBs, which is really cumbersome to work with, and there's some other, there's plenty of other systems out there. Even if someone is not even using a system, a lot of players these days are jamming in the vicinity of what's profitable. You don't see many donkey jams these days where some guys just jammed, King 2 suited from mid with M5 or anything like that. So that's part of the reason why turbos, when you play turbos, you don't have a big edge, because very quickly in a turbo you're short, and players just don't really make that many mistakes short. They make, at worst case, maybe a very small mistake, jamming in an instance where they probably we can jam that, can we? No, not quite. 4-8 to 16, we can fold. In a very short stack, a player might jam, it's a slightly negative EV mistake and that sort of thing. This one's pretty close. I think I will take this because the big blind is sitting out and we're very short. And a lot of players within that spot that I just had there with Queen 5 suitable. It's one of those times when players will most often do the same thing. I mean, if you're comparing an elite online player and a player who's, not very good, if you compare their play, a lot of the time when they're short, they actually will probably make the same plays. And that's just it. I mean, there's no skill edge there. But if you compare it to when they're deep, now they're making vastly different plays. Whether it be the pro being able to escape situations when he was beat, or making some nice check raise and leveraging his stack and picking up pots when the other player would have just given up. It's a bigger skill edge with the deeper stacks, and that's part of the reason why when you hear me talk about stack preservation, usually barring some sort of unique not unique, but barring some sort of ICM situation where survival is a little bit more critical, in general gameplay, you're going to hear me refer to stack preservation more when it's about maintaining a stack size that gives us a greater skill edge, rather than just stack preservation in terms of survival. Obviously, survival in tournaments is very important, but at the end of the day, we want to be playing to win, and it's not a marathon. It's a crazy sprint to the finish line in tournaments, because you just don't get enough hands, and so you've got to make the most with the limited hands that you have. Make the most of the opportunities that you get. So a bit of deep philosophy there to finish off that level with, and take a break, guys, and be back with more action. Hi guys, was hoping to finish this episode with some joy. An exciting final table it would have been, but fell a bit short. Finished up 40th in this last tournament here, the Big 11. Certainly my intention to final table this one day. But there was almost 8,000 players in it today. It's no mean feat, and it was an unfortunate finish. But we were short. Had the Pocket Kings in the small blind. Obviously, good situation. M4. He's going to call pretty wide. He had a pretty easy call with the 8s, and it wasn't the River of Dreams. It ended the run. So that's the end of that chapter. And a quick update here. We are in today after that $144 score, negative $480. So not the best of days, but live to fight another day. Come back recharged next week. Going to take a couple of days off, as I mentioned, and head up into the mountains with the family. And so I shall see you next week, raring and ready to go, and keep building up this bankroll. I'll see you then.